Hey, how you doing? Welcome. Good morning. My name is Jim Grisanzio, and I work at Oracle in the Java Developer Relations team. And I build communities and I profile developers. My slides are all photographs and just a little bit of text. And so I'll see if I can get through everything. I really love profiling developers and taking pictures. So that's really all I have to show today. As I said, I used to work at Sun Microsystems, and these are some of the actually the leaders of Sun years ago. This image is from 2019 at the Sun reunion in California. Now, at that time, Sun had already died for 10 years. It was taken over by Oracle. And behind me, I'm shooting the image, so behind me there's 1,000 people. And what's interesting about this is that these people built a company that could actually have a reunion 10 years after the company was gone. That's incredible. That's really, really amazing. So that's the power of community and the power of contributing to open source. And those are the types of things we'll be talking about here. So the overall context for what I'm talking about here and all the things I've learned from FOSS developers about career is these people tend to do a few things in common. First, they develop very serious skills. They master things. Okay, they're not simply familiar with things, they master them. The second thing they do is they contribute something of value to a community. Okay, and the third thing they do is they actually construct their network, their personal network from those contribution processes. That the most important thing is the contribution. Now that entire process is important because it generates value for you, it generates value for the community, and also your employers, which is very, very important. So this is the Tokyo Linux user group. I actually live in Japan, and I used to manage this group years ago. And this is just a recent image here. So the important thing to remember is everyone wins when everyone contributes. Okay, that's me, and that's my IDE. Years ago, IDEs were strictly hardware. Now, as you know, they're software. And but this is when I was a kid, mostly your age, actually. And this is where I learned the art of craft. This is where I learned to work with craftspeople and artists and hackers. And they were all hardware people because they were in the construction business, but that was my machine. And I used to build homes. I used to dig holes and build homes and grade roads and things like that. And yeah, so the people that I learned with and people I mixed with back then remind me of you guys now. It's the same mentality, people who use their brains and their hands to actually build something. Okay, the most important thing for your career, I believe, which is based on all the interactions I've had with developers for 20 years, is the contribution, okay? When you mix with a community, when you enter a community, participating, showing up is one thing, but it's most important to contribute something, okay? That's important because that's what cuts through the noise. Communities are very loud and noisy and sometimes, hard to understand. Well, recognize that the organizers of the community are specifically looking for contributions. The way you can talk to them is to contribute something. Now, it could be source code, it could be podcasts or documents, or really anything that you want to contribute or anything that the community needs. This is my friend Sai from India, and he's always speaks a lot about contributions. He runs the All India Oracle user group. Now, if you're going to contribute anything anywhere, I highly suggest the FOSS community, which is actually why we're all here, right? And the reason is FOSS communities are designed for contributions. There's an expectation of contribution and merit. They are meritocracies. Just in this one image, this is a long time ago, 2004. There's, Java is represented here, GNU Linux, Apache, Solaris and O'Reilly. These were all very large communities. So all based on an expectation of contributing. This is where I work now. This is the Java. This is the Java community. It's a very large community of 10 million developers. and obviously very global. This image is it's in Las Vegas at Java 1 a few years ago. I know pretty much most of the people there in the image. And along the bottom of the slide, you'll see underlined text. Those are all links. So, so later you can get the slides and you can follow up. There's like 70 links in this presentation. It's just my favorite sources for community building and career building. And we take contributions, so in multiple ways, either through user groups or documents, articles, code, things like that. If you're going to contribute to communities, I suggest contributing to, or at least participating in multiple communities, okay? Because not all communities are the same. They don't necessarily overlap. The cultures can be quite, different. And this is another image here from Java 1 in San Francisco. This is a list here of all the communities I've participated in. It's a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in seeing how different communities function. So don't just contribute to one community, try and get involved in multiple communities. I do draw a distinction between networks, communities, and people for the purposes of building a career. Obviously, community is very, very large. You don't necessarily know everybody. You shouldn't, Your network is something that you build within the community. So that's very personal, and you should obviously know all of those people. But most important to remember is you have to build one person at a time, okay? This is the only way to do it. So think small, one person at a time, medium, and obviously large. These are some engineering students in Indonesia in 2009, and I had this very conversation with them, then, right? So some of these principles are timeless about how communities function. As I said before about merit, it's very important that when you approach a community and you're going to contribute and get involved, to make sure it's a community that is based on merit. This way, it's not a perfect world. Nothing's ever perfect, but this way you have at least a certain, confidence that they're going to take a contribution. They're going to allow you to make, relationships, trust relationships and things like that. This is an image from, this is actually an unconference in Hawaii a few years ago, and we've got about 10 different communities represented here in this image, because we built the, we built the event specifically with that in mind. Please don't try and build your, career alone. It's too hard. There's too many things going on. You can't know everything. And so you need mentors. Really specifically go out and try and find mentors, and also be a mentor as well, because once you're involved, you have something to share. This is a very good friend of mine, Denise Cooper. She knows everyone in the world in open source, and probably everyone else as well. She was very valuable to me when I joined Sun in 2000 for introducing me to this whole concept of open source and community building, and she remains a mentor today. And mentors are, they tend to be leaders, okay, in the community. But one of the cool things about how communities function is that leadership is distributed, and it's distributed via action. So just because somebody has a cool title from a company or something like that doesn't necessarily mean they have any seniority within the community. It's based on action, and people are, there's a lot of sort of normal people in communities who have very substantial, very substantial authority. And so this is an image from the Community Leadership Summit. Jonah Bacon there on the left, sitting down, is the leader of that, and he actually obviously comes from the Linux community. And there's plenty of leaders in communities that you can engage. This is a concept here, performance versus success. I wish I knew about this when I was a kid, actually. If you haven't read the book, The Formula, it's the link here on the right-hand side. It's called The Formula. And it's about, a few principles about how networks function. This concept of performance is interesting. Performance is about you. It's your skills, how much you can work, how good you are essentially, right? But performance is bounded. You can't work too much. You can't. There's only so many hours. There's so many lines of code that you can write. Things like that. It has a bound around it. Success, however, is not about you. Success is about us, the community. Success is how the community is basically the result of what you contribute. Okay, and the whole point here is this is why we contribute. When you contribute to a community and the community scales, it scales way more than you could possibly scale alone. Okay, so this concept is really, really important. Performance and success are obviously related, but they're not the same thing. Another concept outlined in the book, the same book, called The Formula, the link on the lower right, is called productivity versus innovation. And this is important for young people as well as old people like me. All right. We oftentimes, older guys like me hear, oh, you're not as innovative as the young people. They're smarter than you and this and that. But it turns out that when you get a large data set, that's not true. And this author here, Albert Barabase, actually has a data set of all scientists, all papers for 100 years. That's a pretty good data set. And it turns out the signal says that as long as you can produce the same volume of work, it doesn't matter the age, the same volume of work, you have the same chance of success. So it's not about age, but it is, however, about productivity. And this is where older people can't produce as much as younger people. So keep that in mind when you're young now, is to stay healthy, because when you get older, you will drop off in terms of your productivity. And this is actually a friend of mine, actually a Bashir Khan, who I learned a lot about productivity from him. Oh, and by the way, just to go back, this is obviously James Gosling. He's the father of Java, and a friend of mine, and I learned obviously a lot from him about actually both performance and success, because he and his friends years ago built one of the largest communities in the world. Okay, assertion. We all have to assert ourselves, and this is very hard for a lot of people. It's very hard for me. These two engineers here from Beijing and actually impressed me substantially when they stood up at a conference and they had an issue to discuss with the entire kernel team at Sun. That's 300 kernel engineers. If you know anything about kernel engineers, they're a pretty smart lot and a pretty tough lot. And these two kids at the time stood up and they actually held hands, just like you see here, and they said their issue and they had a discussion with the team. And it just impressed me so much that they did that. That's very assertive. And so be assertive is very important, because it's the only way we know our value in real time. This obviously is a picture of Linus Torvalds, and right after I took this image, I had a conversation with him, and I told him how I lost my platform and how I was the Open Solaris community manager at Sun. And at the time, years ago, it was Linux and Open Solaris. There was a lot of conflict. And I had a great conversation with him, but it was very interesting that he listened to me talk, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, because I lost my project. It's very important to think in terms of your project as a platform. You stand on that platform and you do work, but if that platform goes away, you have a problem on your hands, like I did. But he was very kind. He gave me half an hour of his time. We had a great conversation, and I learned a lot from it. So change happens. These are a group of engineers, database engineers in India a few years ago. And we always talk about this concept of change and blistering change, and how to handle it, and AI and autonomous autonomous databases are changing markets, and so everything changes in every moment, and we have to realize that we can't fight this. It's the world we live in, and it's best to just embrace it. This is a friend of mine, Matthew Dons. I've learned a lot about him, about learning. Now, I think it's very important that we leverage all the tools that we can. but never allow a tool to take out your ability to think. AI is great, ChatGPT, all these things are great to help you, but don't ever allow something to take away your ability to learn, and then you become dependent completely on some tool. And all the links, at the bottom of the slide point to really innovative learning techniques that come from the scientific literature that have been around for 100 years, but they're just not taught in school. And they're really interesting concepts like spaced repetition, gap effect, mastery versus familiarity, especially from this book called Make It Stick on the right-hand side. That book is extraordinary. I highly recommend you read that book. It's a very simple read, but it gives you practical steps that you can keep learning in an innovative way. One of the ways that we do learn, and one of the most effective things that developers do, is they tend to go very, very deeply into things. This is, another friend, Satoka from Japan. She's hacking at Tokyo Hackerspace. And I noticed this is in all developers. You see that at conferences here. They're around a laptop. They're hacking on something. They're focused very, very deeply. The brain works differently at the surface versus at deeper levels. When you're doing surface work or shallow work, it's very hard to do innovative things. You really create true innovation and interesting things that get you promoted when you do deep work. And there's obviously a book. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport. He's a computer scientist. Also an extraordinary book to read. These things are hard. I totally admit it. Career is a hard thing to do, but it's necessary. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago, to embrace hard things. This is a friend of mine, Ayana from Japan. And behind me is thousands of people. She's on the keynote stage at Java 1, very prestigious conference. And, this had to have been hard for her. She's doing, obviously, a martial arts, show here. But she's in front of thousands and thousands of people. And so she bowled through it, and she succeeded. And it just illustrated to me to embrace hard things, because your career is a hard thing, and your brain adapts. Neurologically, your brain adapts when you push through things that are very hard. Mastery is really what we're talking about here versus familiarity. If you listen to a podcast, you take a class, you do this, you do that, that's good. That means you're familiar with something. But the point is to master something. All the developers that I've learned from who've achieved these huge successes, they are true experts in something, whatever it happens to be. This is Bonnie Corn. I worked for her for 10 years in Solaris, and she managed our engineering team. She's an extraordinary manager. I've never in my life experienced such a highly skilled manager. She focused on details, 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 details. It's the only way to deal with complexity is to master the details. This is another friend, Joey Ito from Tokyo. He's obviously a photographer. He used to lead MIT Media Lab. He's a PhD. He's very famous, but he's a super nice guy, and he's very, very approachable. And one of the things that he taught me is to think in terms of the possibilities. Now, when I say taught me, I'm observing this in these people, okay? They don't actually, teach me. I'm just observe what they do. I observe very, very carefully. So you have to work very deeply on your career while this focused work, but then take time to come back up and look at the broad, picture and see what's possible. It's another hacker friend of mine, Chris Benson from Oracle. He built this machine with some, help, from Oracle teams. It runs all of Oracle's, software, Java, Linux, and everything. But that's 1,000 Raspberry Pi. I have 5 minutes left. And so my point here is to go bold. And when you go bold, you attract other people to your project. I mentioned earlier about old and young people. If you're young, take your health very, very seriously, because you need to be able to perform throughout time. And I've been in the hospital for years. I know what it's like. And I can assure you, you can't build career from a hospital bed. So just the message to take your health very, very seriously. All right, we're just going to end up with some comments from the community here. This is the guy I work for right now at Oracle, Sharth Chander. Again, Java has 10 million developers, and Shar believes that community is the most important thing. And I agree with that. This is Venkat Subramaniam. He is a professor and a teacher, and he's also one of the more famous engineers in the Java community. And he believes that writing code and seeing it evolve is therapeutic. This man is after quality. He loves code, he loves developers, he loves people. True quality. The guy in the middle there is Brian Cantrell. He's a kernel developer from Sun years ago, a friend of mine. And he said, ideas are expressed in code. The implementation is the idea. To have a conversation with Brian, you should write some code. This is the way they think. Okay, you don't just talk and talk and talk and talk. Get an idea, write something down, write some code. All right. The implementation actually expresses the idea. Another friend, Alan Burleson, obviously from Solaris, he's talking about privilege, contribution, and things that are earned. Okay, this is all this supporting what I've been talking about. Simon Phipps, another friend of mine from Sun, talks about code is king, and the people who write it make the decisions. So in any community that you go to, the people that tend to make the decisions are the people that are doing the work. Okay? So it's another sort of illustration that when you come into a community, to not be passive. Actually assert yourself and write something and contribute something. The guy in the middle there is Stephen Hahn, and he's also a friend from Solaris, a PhD. And Stephen always used to say, you know, people in the community are, you know, you're always interviewing. So when you're doing code reviews, you're exchanging emails, you're having arguments and debate, you're integrating code, you have your contributions, all these different things, you have conflict. All this activity it's in the open. You're on open mailing lists of one form or another, open forums. That's your interview. We're talking about career here. Think in terms of your very work, things that you do every day in the open community. You're interacting with your colleagues, but it's open. Everyone can see it. Treat that as your interview. Another guy I was very close 2 years ago was Stephen Chin, and Stephen was, actually worked for Stephen at Oracle. He always used to say, you are what you do. You are what you do right now. Stephen was always very good at engaging new projects and just saying, oh, we'll figure it out. Again, action. This is my podcast. I've interviewed hundreds of people and for videos and for audio and streams and things like that. Right now it's focused on Java. So it's called Duke's Corner. This is the type, everything I've said to you is what I do with these interviews. They're all non-technical. We talk about technology, from a broad perspective, talk about people and community. And I always bring up career. And this is a friend of mine from Google. I don't have anything to say. I just love the picture. And finally, this is a Java conference. This is an unconference. It's in Hawaii in January. So my question to you is, how do you get here? There's no call for papers with events like this, usually. The answer is, you have to know these guys. You have to know them. It's just that simple. And how do you do that? It's, well, you got to master some skills. You have to contribute something to a community. And in that contribution process, you build your personal network. You benefit, the community benefits, your employers benefit. That's the system. Those are the things I've observed from developers, who I interview over the years. This guy here is Bruno Souza, and I've known him for Bruno, just like Eduardo, for like 20 years. He's in Brazil. And he talks about career all the time. All the links on the bottom there point to either interviews I've done with him or his book. Okay, super, super sweet guy. And again, he knows everybody in the world. So he knows how to build career. And that's it. If you want to get the slides, they're right there. There's about 70 links in the slides pointing to various career resources, community development resources. and just my favorite links, basically. Cheers.